Life is a full range of emotions, and sometimes I'd have to admit that it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that God's presence is tied to our feeling of happiness. I would have to disagree with that, but not entirely. I would say God is present regardless of us being happy or sad. God is always present and active in our lives in times of joy and blessings, as well as our times of deep despair, sadness, and suffering. As we said last week, God doesn't promise us happiness like we think of it. In Scripture, it's more than just an emotion. It's bigger than that, and it's closer to meaning complete or at peace. Still, we can start to believe that if we're not constantly happy, we must be doing something wrong, or that God has somehow forgotten about us. Sometimes we try to force positivity into our prayers or conversations about faith just to avoid dealing with the difficult emotions. We may put on a brave face, say the right things, and hope to somehow skip or ignore the pain. But at the end of the day, the pain is still there. What would it look like for us to invite God into those difficult moments? Because God is always with us, we can know that God shows up in all of our feelings. A guy named David who we talked about last week, also spoke in Psalms that gives us a great, beautiful picture of God showing up in all those feelings. Here's what he said. Is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit, to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, you're there. If I go underneath the ground, you are there. If I flew on the morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute. You're already waiting there. Then I said to myself, oh, he even sees me in the dark. At night, I'm immersed in the light. It's a fact. Darkness isn't dark to you. Night and day, darkness and light, they're all the same to you. David implied that wherever he went and whatever he was feeling, God was there. God is with us in every emotion that we experience in this life. Our feelings are not signs of God's absence. Instead, God meets us in those feelings. Even Jesus felt big emotions. In fact, Jesus experienced the loss of a close friend named Lazarus. Lazarus got sick and died while Jesus was on a trip. When Jesus returns to Lazarus' house, we see his unfiltered emotion. We see his struggle. And here's what it says in John. When Jesus saw her sobbing and the Jews with her sobbing, a deep anger welled up in him and he said, "Where did you put the body?" Jesus felt anger when he saw the pain caused by death. Anger isn't a bad emotion. It's valid and important. As Jesus approached the place where Lazarus was lying, John continues the story, and it says, Jesus began to weep. Jesus felt deep sorrow. Jesus shows us that it's okay to cry. It doesn't mean that you lack faith. It's a big part of being human. God shows up in all of our feelings. There are no bad feelings, just feelings that make us feel uncomfortable or maybe are unfamiliar to us. Give God your emotions because God shows up in all of your feelings. When we allow ourselves to fully feel our emotions, we create space for God to meet us in those feelings, and he brings us comfort and peace. God shows up in all of it. Happiness, sadness, anger, joy. Every emotion is a part of your human experience here on earth. And God is present in every single one of them. This week, let's commit to being honest with ourselves and with God about our feelings. I look forward to seeing you guys next week.